Well, greetings. We'd like to welcome all of you to our fifth and final senior thesis of the year. And we conclude with a difficult subject that has a foot in both philosophy and biology. The intersection of those is the topic for tonight. Teleology's inseparable relationship with biology, and Dylan Clabaugh will be enlightening us and answering all of our difficult questions.
I'd like to start by thanking everyone for coming. It looks like my biology poster's got like maybe one person in the back. But
3, 4 pounds.
Yeah. So I'd like to thank you guys for being here because this is philosophy, and I know you guys don't always come to philosophy, so I'd like to thank you for coming. I'd like to say a little bit about how I came to this topic. I was actually in Dr. Doug Drabkin's Greek philosophy class, and in there we study Aristotle. And in the second book of the Physics, Aristotle is describing his view of causation, and he talks about a final cause. It's like teleology, it's purpose talk. And there's actually a passage where he's objecting to himself, and he describes what I interpret to be very, very, very close to how we think about evolution today, and then dismisses it offhand because he doesn't know about genes. And that really got me thinking about what Aristotle and the view of teleology, what's its relationship with biology? And so then that evolved, and pun intended, evolved into this thesis today. So I'd like to start with an example. If we ask the question, why does the heart beat? So there's the heart. An educated response, after taking some anatomy classes and maybe some physiology, could be something like, nerve cells trigger the contraction of cardiac muscles in a rhythmic pattern that we feel as beats in order to pump blood through a system of vessels that supply the body with oxygen and vital nutrients. I'd like to really point out that there is two different kinds of answers in the response I just gave. There's an answer to how the heart beats by referencing the nerves triggering muscle contraction. That is how the heart beats. And then the second part was an answer to what for. For what does the heart beat? And that is to pump blood through the body. Both of these worked together in order to fully answer our question of why does the heart beat? This is the reason I'm actually writing about this. Biology in the last 150 years has made an attempt to shift itself from a focus on how questions. Kind of like the other sciences. Biologists are really trying to just explain things like the nerve contraction, how photosynthesis works, things like that. We're explaining hows. However, I'll sit in biology classes and ask biology questions and get what for answers. And so that is the purpose of this. The goal of this presentation is to explore this relationship. What do we really mean to say when we are explaining biological features? And then ultimately hope to convince all of you that teleology is required for biological explanation. So, teleology. I'm going to use that term a lot. It comes from the Greek word telos, meaning a goal or end. And so teleology then answers questions about purpose, goals, and ends. For what goal or purpose is a given thing? That is a teleological question. And a perfect example of teleological objects that have teleological answers are human artifacts. They're things that we create. You're all using chairs. A chair is an object. We can ask a teleological question about a chair. What is chair for? And we respond with a teleological answer. The chair is for sitting. And this goes for many, many things. There's a video camera taping me. That is for taping things. You're all drinking out of cups. Those are for drinking out of. They're teleological. The counter, the other side, the how side of this topic, I'm going to term reductionism. A definition of reductionism could be the attempt to reduce properties, concepts, explanations, or methods of one scientific domain to those of another. So this would be going from biology to chemistry, taking everything we explain in biology and explaining it through biochemistry, and biochemistry as chemistry, and chemistry as physics. The basic idea is that the empirical, actual things that can be verified by experience, the testable things in nature, are the things we talk about in our how answers. So the idea is that we don't lose, we want to explain something in the best way possible, in the simplest way possible. Purpose talk, teleology, the idea in reductionism is that there's nothing in teleology to test. You can't test biological purposes in the sense of what for. You can test the how. And so we reduce the teleological talk. The wings for flight, the eyes for sight, and examples like that, we reduce that into our how talk. Now, how they do that is through natural selection. This is one of the best ways to do it. My attempt at summarizing natural selection in only one paragraph is this. All life uses DNA. Mutations occur upon this DNA, and a mutation being a change in the DNA. Natural selection is the theory describing the differential survival of individuals resulting from these mutations under natural pressures. The natural pressures are like limited food supply. It just suddenly got really cold yesterday. That killed a lot of stuff. That's a natural pressure. Natural selection is said to favor adaptive traits that lead to an increased fitness. Adaptive means it leads to its increased fitness, and fitness is the description of how many offspring an organism can produce. Higher fitness, higher offspring, relative to its own species and like species. Because if we compared an insect to a human, an insect is going to have a phenomenally higher fitness than the human would. So it's going to be relative. And I want to stress that this explanation, based on natural selection, whenever you explain something on natural selection, it is a how answer. So an example of this, if we ask the question, why do birds have wings? We have two answers. We have a teleological answer, which are usually quick, short, sweet, and right to the point. Birds have wings in order to fly. A more reduced, in the sense that it doesn't have purpose, explanation, much lengthier. Birds have wings because those reptiles with early kinds of wings, resulting from mutation, experienced higher fitness and, as a result, passed on those genes that led to the early kinds of wings. Selection further favored the offspring with even more adaptive kinds of wings over a very long period of time. Very, very long period of time. Natural selection shaped the wing into its current form. Focusing on how versus focusing on what form. So I'd like now to turn and talk about an evolutionary biologist, Gould. He argued against the position that he terms adaptationism. Adaptationism can be defined as the position that all traits, whether currently known or not, are the result of selection. They are an adaptation. He believes and argues that there exist cases where a trait has no discernible purpose in any way. Natural selection has not shaped it, therefore it is not an adaptation. An example, first, he's going to use an analogy to help us come to see this. His analogy is what he calls spandrels. I don't actually think spandrels is an accepted term for this architectural feature, but he calls them spandrels. The spandrel is the result of architectural necessity. It is this that like triangular shape. So it's a dome sitting on top of pillars, and as the dome comes to the pillar, it has no choice. It has to create a triangle shape in order to stay up. And many old churches have domes like this on pillars, but they want to paint the ceiling, and so artwork oftentimes incorporates these spandrels into the artwork. Now,
just butt in a little something. As I was reading your paper, he used an example, King's College Chapel in
Yes.
Cambridge. If you go online and look that up, there's an amazing architectural thing above it. It's like that, but really cool. You can show us that later.
Okay. But that's a spandrel. Artwork incorporates the spandrels. Now, by analogy, just as the spandrels exist due simply because of architectural necessity rather than aesthetic purpose. The spandrel is not there so that this figure can be pouring water down it. The spandrel does not exist for that reason. Rather, it exists because of architectural necessity. By analogy, some traits exist in biology that are because of architectural necessity or some other non-selected reason. And of course, an example will help with this. An example is the human chin. Gould believes an example is the human chin. There's Jay Leno's chin. He has a very prominent chin, and so we're going to use Jay Leno as our example. The chin, Gould asserts that the chin exists as a result of the formation of other parts of the face, namely the jaw. So the chin, the actual shape of the chin exists out of architectural necessity rather than from selection. Now, a selective story about the chin would be something like sexual selection, which is similar to natural selection, except that the natural pressures is the choosiness of mates that result in the selection towards a specific feature, that could maybe be a sexy chin, right? So Jay Leno has a sexy chin. It's big, it's prominent, it gets selected for, and so for that reason, humans have chins. Gould asserts that that is not accurate, that the chin exists simply because when you're putting the jaw together, you end up with this protruding feature that stands out on the face. Okay. So how does Gould's position relate to teleology? Teleological language is used in what Gould refers to as just-so stories. These are cases where we don't have a working explanation of why a trait evolved, and so we form one. So I'm going to bring us back to the chin example for this. I had said that a possible explanation of the chin based in selection would be sexual selection, that females choose men with very nice, sexy-looking chins. And so therefore, the chin is sexually selected to look a certain way. He believes that this is mistaken. In telling of just so stories, we use teleological language, like I just did in saying that the chin serves the purpose of being sexy, right, and attracting females. And so we give it purpose. So Gould's argument essentially is that there are cases when biology has no reason to use teleology because this language is used under the assumption that traits have adaptive purpose, like the chin being for sexual selection. So, in opposition, I now turn to a philosopher of biology, Michael Ruse. He believes that teleological language in just so cases is acceptable, and that we can use teleological language. He really objects on two grounds. One, that adaptationism, the position described by Gould, does not require that we believe that all traits are adaptive. There's two really possibilities in relation to this objection. One is that the feature could have arisen out of architectural necessity, chance, genetic drift, all these features. The feature could have arisen out of that, but then selection took over after that and then made it adaptive. So the chin exists due to architectural necessity of forming the face, but sexual selection takes over there, puts a little bit of hair on it, gives it a cleft, things like this, makes it sexy. The second part is that teleological language used in these just so stories is good for the practice of biology. He's very careful to make sure that the point is clear that the teleology that we're using, the teleological language, this purpose talk, is only metaphorical. We're describing biological traits as if they were designed to have purpose. We're treating them like human artifacts. And here, the purpose is like, like the chair. So the chair has the purpose for sitting, and we are treating biological traits like the chin, like our chin, as if it has a purpose in the same way that the chair has a purpose. And again, an example will help us to see this. Why does the Dimetrodon have a sail? For those of you unfamiliar with the Dimetrodon, this is a Dimetrodon. Now, the bottom one is, of course, an artist's rendition of a Dimetrodon, and so take that in hindsight. But up top is the skeletal remains of a Dimetrodon. So you can see it has very big bones sticking up out of the back of its back. Very, very, it looks like a sail. And so we can ask the question, why does the Dimetrodon have a sail? But it's important to note that this question treats the Dimetrodon as if it were designed with future purpose, like human artifacts. When that chair was designed, it was designed for a future purpose. It was going to the purpose of the chair is to be fulfilled in the future, to be sit in by human beings over and over and over again. Roos believes that this language is appropriate because natural selection has shaped the feature to look in such a way that it appears as if it were designed, in the same way that we design artifacts. We design the chair for sitting. Natural selection creates traits that look very much like they were designed, like the sail. But it is still merely metaphor. I'm going to quote Roos here because this is the most important point for his position. At a strictly causal level, one is indeed implying that the sail exists because earlier Dimetrodons with sails frightened predators. Not the sail exists to future frighten predators. The sail exists because it was selected for, because in the past it scared predators. Not the sail exists because it's going to scare predators. One is future, one is more past-centered. Now, I made this note because I felt obligated to. It probably is actually because of thermal regulation, and Roos even mentions that, and so I'm not entirely sure why he still said frightening predators, but it was likely due to thermal regulation. And then the teleological language is not meant to imply that it's truly designed in the same way that the chair is. Now, the second objection that Roos had to Gould was that it was useful for the practice of biology, and this is that point. Teleology can be used because it serves a heuristic value, a discovery-enabling heuristic. Something that is heuristic is something that enables further learning. So, discovery-enabling role in the practice of biology. This heuristic value is in the form of question generating. This is what science is all about asking questions and finding answers to them. And so he believes and argues that the teleology that biologists use serves this role, that it helps us generate questions for us to answer in the practice of science. And then biologists can discuss what these features do at present with teleology, and then later use these ideas to discover the effects of natural selection in the past. An example of this in action, we're going to talk about ants. Edward O. Wilson was looking to study the reason for the large variety in the body forms of ants within a single species. Up here is an example of this. We have one very large ant, relatively speaking, one very large ant with wings, a medium-sized ant with wings, and one without wings at all, that is the smallest of the three. He was interested in understanding why this. Why do some of them go on to have wings and be absolutely massive compared to the ones that have no wings and are small? To do this, Wilson used the metaphor of design, teleology. He treated them as if they were designed like human artifacts, treated them as if they had purpose, used teleological language to discover the caste system, and then allowed us to ultimately see the way in which the forms were shaped by natural selection. So far, we have Gould would like to see teleology gone in these just so cases. the just so stories, because we're assuming that the traits are adaptive. Roos responds saying that it is okay in just so stories because it serves a heuristic value. It allows us to ask questions. But what I'm really interested in is it only necessary while it's valuable? Or could it be reduced if we were to have godlike knowledge of all the organism's natural histories? That would be... So it serves a heuristic value because we don't understand the causal history of natural selection on the trait in the case of like the ants. But if we did understand natural selection's role on the formation of those ants, would we still need to describe the ants with purpose talk? Would we still need to describe it as a caste system, with the worker ants being for simply pulling stuff in, slightly larger ants with bigger mouths being for feeding young, and one really big, completely and totally not movable ant for only producing young? Would we still need to do that if we had that full understanding of natural selection in the past? Roos's position, it appears to be that the metaphor of design is only necessary while it's heuristically valuable. But it's not clear. His writing places huge emphasis on its heuristic value and really, really emphasizes that it's really, really useful for biology. But I believe that ultimately he believes teleological language can be eliminated from biological explanation, because were we to gain that full causal history and that full selection explanation, we would no longer need biology. I'm going to introduce my conclusion, my conclusion in the end, I want us to all think of an example here. A well-studied plant species is placed into a controlled environment, such as a terrarium, and after many generations, the organism has now evolved thorns. So when we put it in there, it's a model species. We know a lot about it. Sequenced the gene, we've studied it a lot, we've done lots of experiments on it, didn't have thorns. Place it in the terrarium, and after many, 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 many generations, like it's a short-lived plant, it now has thorns. If a person, say a child or a friend of one of the biologists, asked about the thorns, what is required to fully explain this new feature? Because we have a full causal history. There's two ways the biologists can answer. They can say the thorns exist to deter predators, a teleological what-for answer, or the thorns exist because previous generations with thorns experienced higher fitness and as a result passed on their genes more successfully. I now want to bring our attention to two different kinds of teleology. We've been talking about teleology in the future sense. I want us to now talk about another kind of teleology. Teleology used in explaining why biological features are adaptive. While the metaphor of design was focused on the future, like our human artifacts have future purpose, this is reducible, and that was Roos's point, that we're not saying that biological features were actually designed. That, he says, is reducible. I don't believe it's as clear that this kind of teleology is. So let's explore that teleology. Again, teleology was the use of goal or ends. In the metaphor, this was goal in the future, like our chair has the goal in the future of being sit in. With this teleology, this new kind that I want to bring our attention to, the goal is the function for which a given trait was selected for, but in the past. This is still teleology because we're still talking about goals and purposes, but it's being selected for. In the case of the thorns, we can explain their origin without using the metaphor of design by explaining how the thorns seem to have been selected for, leading to their current presence, using natural selection, talking about fitness of those that had thorns and the fitness of those that did not. We're still left asking, though, why or what for the trait was selected. This, once again, is a question that asks for purpose. We're asking for the purpose in the selection of the trait. I'm now going to introduce a new concept, natural purpose. A natural purpose is the purpose that a given biological feature has that results from its being selected for in the past. It doesn't have purpose in the future sense, like our chair. It gains its purpose in the natural sense when it's selected for. The bird's wing isn't shaped by natural selection with the purpose of allowing it to fly at an excess of 200 miles an hour, like the peregrine falcon, which is an awesome bird. Rather, by allowing birds to fly, and thus increasing fitness, the wing has the natural purpose of flight. So, I'm using the word purpose to describe a biological trait. That is a controversial thing to do. So I want to differentiate between what I'm going to call natural purpose and what I believe is the traditional, more normal use, I mean, not normal, but the traditional use of purpose, which I'm going to call intentional purpose. Natural purpose is different in the relation of this purpose and its associated function. With intentional purpose, the kind that humans go about doing and creating, there is a function intended to a given thing. The chair is intended for sitting. But with natural purpose, the kind that comes as a result of natural selection, there is no intended function with a given thing, like feathers. Feathers, insulation, they're really sturdy, so they allow to be used as an airfoil. They're used showy for sexual selection. They don't have an intended function. The difference is the lack of intention. When something with intentional purpose is used for some other purpose than what it was originally intended, we notice. An example is a chair is a hat. If you saw somebody walking around wearing a chair on their head, you would notice that that is not its intended function. The second example is a real example. My uncle ended up doing this when we found his house. He was using a refrigerator that was still plugged in as a bookshelf. And he stored files in it. He stored books in it. We noticed that that is not the intended function of a refrigerator.
Cool books, though.
Yeah, really cool. When something with a natural purpose, on the other hand, is used for a different purpose, the same is not true. My example is a bird using its wings to shade its young on a really hot day. The wings, as we notice, and I will claim, have the natural purpose of flight. It is what they're best suited to do. But if a bird fans its wings out to protect its young who have no means of insulation, or in this case cooling, it's not the same feeling that we did with using the refrigerator's bookshelf. And that difference is that there is no intended function in natural features. Functions in biology are liable to change. And this is actually arguably a major driving force for evolution. Most new traits, or most highly selected for traits, say the wing, are actually, the original function was likely not for flight, and it was likely for something else. One of the leading hypotheses is inclined running. The wing actually evolved to help birds run and stay on the ground if they ran uphill. So, functions in biology can change on their own. So, in a little bit of a summation, Gould's view of teleology, in just so cases, is incomplete because of the value teleology has in the practice of biology, the question-generating heuristic value that we get out of talking about things as if they were designed. Roos's view of teleology, while accurate, needs expanded upon in order to explore the role of teleology in our explanations of what for a given trait being adaptive. So, natural purpose is the purpose in adaptations. Teleology is required for full biological explanations because in our explanations of adaptation, we require teleology to explain what for a given trait was adaptive, the purpose it was selected for. Whatever the function happens to be that it was selected for, I describe as its natural purpose. This function can be said to be its natural purpose. So, in final summation, why does the model species have thorns? It has thorns because thorns were selected for in previous generations due to their predator-deterring abilities, giving it the natural purpose to deter predators.
So are you familiar with junk DNA?
Yes.
I know it's in humans, and maybe Dr. Schwanger or America could help me out. But that seems to be disadvantageous. If we want to explain that, would we have to do it in terms of its past adaptive value or its current function? Even though its current function seems to be deleterious.
Actually, I don't think its current function is actually probably.
What's the example? Sorry.
Okay, so junk DNA is
junk DNA.
Yeah, junk DNA. For those who don't know, is just large sections of DNA that don't actually code for anything. They don't actually produce any proteins and lead to the actual creation of anything that's necessary for survival.
But it does take a
But
large amount of resources to create.
It does. It does require ATP, which is the energy of life, to actually create it. And so we like to say that if something uses ATP to be created, then it should be adaptive, or it would be selected against. That's actually a case that Gould would call a just so story if I were to explain it in terms of selection. And I think it is acceptable to explain it in terms of selection because I think it actually serves the natural purpose. The reason it stays around is a big, giant cushion for mutation. If mutation occurs on the junk DNA, no bad effect. If it occurs on DNA that is actually coded for something, really bad effect. And it can also be explained in the past, in selection that it had in the past. If the DNA was doubled, a lot of junk DNA, I think, is the result of just the simple doubling. And I think plants actually are known for having huge amounts of DNA because they really just accidentally double a lot of their DNA. And so it would be explained, and the section of DNA that got doubled was adaptive in the past, and then now is no longer adaptive. Go ahead.
So getting the overall picture, so you're claiming that teleological language is irreducible in certain contexts, or for certain purposes is irreducible. Is that right?
I'm saying it's irreducible because it's required to answer the question of why something was adaptive.
Well, how about, what if I said something like, the thorns, you said, well, we have to talk about the what for. Why were those thorns selected for? Why were they adaptive? You're thinking that the teleological stuff has got to be that explanation. Yeah.
Yes, I'm thinking that it is in order for a full biological explanation.
So, but it seems to me that given that we have reductive definitions of notions like adaptiveness, adaption. So we could say that the what for, or by the what for, I just mean what effect resulted in the trait's continued presence in the gene pool. So isn't that a way of just...
I think it's still teleological, though.
Okay.
Because as we're explaining why it was adaptive, as we're explaining its adaptivity, its continued passing on of the genes in relation to natural selection, we're still assigning it a purpose. Because we're saying that natural selection selected it for some function.
Well, that's not what I was thinking. I was thinking of something like this. If I want to say, well, why are these thorns here? And I say, well, the example people always point to is the heart. I'll go with the heart instead of thorns. And people say, all right, what does the heart do? The answer is, well, there's oodles of things hearts do. They make nice thumpy noises. They burn calories. They pump blood. They do all these things. And the thought is, well, what was the heart selected for? That question really should be understood as, of all the things that hearts do, which of those effects was causally responsible for its continued presence? That doesn't sound teleological to me. Am I missing it, or is that...
So are you thinking we would be able to, if somebody asked what the heart was for, you simply explain it in saying the heart has many functions, and one of these functions was to pump blood through the body?
Avoid function. It does many things. It has
Yes.
many effects. It causes many things. Most of those are irrelevant to its continued. The fact that it makes a nice thumpy noise was presumably causally irrelevant to its continued presence. That's just a frill, right? And so that's the idea. I think we could eliminate function talk entirely if we just said, okay, of all the effects that their presence has, one of those, or maybe some select number of those effects, complex was causally responsible for its continued presence in the human creator. And to me, that doesn't sound teleological. And it sounds like a way of reducing activity to non-teleological notions.
I'm not really sure.
Because I get what you're saying. Like, if I want to use words like adaptiveness, I mean, yeah, I see the teleology might very well be packed into those concepts, but could I just unpack those concepts a little bit further and get rid of it entirely?
Can I close on an idea and answer, to see if this is something you and I talked about the other day. I was floating an idea interpreting his paper. What's he really interested in right there? Okay, and we'll see if this is whether you'll own up to this now or not. Okay, what he's really interested in here is discussing value in biology. Value as a biological idea. Now, when you go back to Aristotle, when he tries to explain something, he'll explain in terms of the matter of the stuff. Well, it's a fact. Either it's made of this or it's not. They'll talk about its causal ancestry or whatever it is, the efficient causal, what gave rise to it. He'll talk about, its shape or its form. These are all just straight facts. Once you throw final cause in, now you're talking value. You're talking about the good for the thing. Now, in physics, there is no good. There just isn't. I mean, what's the good about, I don't know, the orbit of some asteroid between Mars and Jupiter around the sun or something? Who knows? It just is. In chemistry, it's just is. In biology, though, there's all sorts of situations where you could say, is this... I mean, it doesn't have to be a sentient being, so it doesn't have to have desires or anything. It could be a dandelion, Is it good for a dandelion to have water? Oh, yeah. I mean, that's actually a meaningful thing to say. It's actually good for the organism. Is it good for dandelions to, whatever, have sun go upon their lion-toothed leaves? Yes, that's a good thing for the plant. It's all about the good. Now remember, I was floating this by you the other day, suggesting that maybe to avoid confusion, forget to talk about purpose, and you're groping with this phrase, natural purpose. Just deep six that and talk about the beneficial to the organism. The idea being that that living things, there's such a thing as the good for it. Now, I'm mentioning this to you again, in part because you're inviting this.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Will you take this out? Or, I mean, by this, not take this out. Will you take this way to answer this, or is this something else? I mean,
Yeah, I think that's really the idea behind. But I mean, I still think purpose is an okay way to explain that.
But you see how it invites people? I mean, you have to work to tease apart intentional purpose, which is what everybody has in mind, with this other thing. Right?
Yes.
What if you just forget purpose talk and just say, is a heart a good thing for, say, a pig to have? Oh yeah, it's good. Because they'll die if they don't have one. And you can explain why. And in other words, we don't have to go into too mysterious metaphysics about the goodness of being alive, but it's... Well, yeah, actually, we do. I mean, there's something intrinsically valuable for the organism to be alive. That's what you're inviting, this line of thought.
And once you have the same reductionist challenge that goodness is just not useful in that domain, we can get rid of it.
Was that a challenge?
I don't know. Go ahead, Carl.
Sort of a broader question, maybe it fits with Doug's as well. If we accept a kind of physical reductionism, or a kind of physicalism or materialism, where everything is really just particles and interactions, and then biology reduces to physics. If physics doesn't need teleology, doesn't it ultimately have to be reducible? Otherwise, you're introducing some mysterious weirdness at the upper level that's not reducible.
That kind of is actually my point, that there is some extra, and the way you described it was weirdness in biology that isn't reducible. And that kind of is my point.
So that biology ultimately is not reducible to physics, that there's something more to the world than particles?
Yeah, in our explanations of it, yes. And that was the adaptiveness that we were trying to explain, which I call natural purpose.
Right, so it's in an ontological sense, there's something more than just particles and forces? Because if there's not, then it has to be reducible, doesn't it?
The argument almost made it seem like it was only in a grammatical sense, that it was only in
I think,
some sort of necessity of communication.
yeah, I think it's a necessity of our mind. Kind of like the Kantian idea that we can't view the world differently than we do, and so there's certain constraints that we have to have. And I think that's kind of it, kind of like the psychology of the biologist, where it's necessary and irreducible in the sense that we can't have a full explanation of biological things without this teleology. Yes?
Can something be random and have meaning? Mutations are random.
Yeah. Not at first, I don't think. I think it would have to be selected for. Because one of the main points that I'm trying to argue for, is that this natural purpose, this idea of natural purpose, and it's different from intentional purpose. I'm thinking that these purposes, they arrive at having a primary function. And, I mean, there's a couple different ways you can arrive at having a primary function. You can design it that way. You can intend it that way. Or it can be selected for, be advantageous for the organism. And so something that's truly random, at first, no, it would not have purpose because nothing has acted upon it to give it a purpose. Yes?
So, I mean, I think just to expand on that a little bit, one of the hallmarks of natural selection is oftentimes the repurposing of existing traits. And you touched on this a little
Yes.
bit. So can you comment on how that is compatible with this idea of natural purpose?
Yeah. We get the idea of natural purpose from whatever a trait's primary function happens to be. And so should selection favor a different primary function, should the function change, then its natural purpose changes with it. So like in the wing, original natural purpose would be to allow inclined running without falling backwards. And then as selection favored a different function, as one of the wing's other, or I guess in Gould language, proximate functions, as one of the proximate functions comes to, I guess, fruition and becomes a primary function, then the natural purpose is changed. And that's the real difference between intentional purpose and natural purpose, is that natural purpose can do it on its own.
So it really is just kind of a grammatical...
Yeah, in a way, yeah. It's the way our mind works. It's the way we have to do science because it's just the way we have to think about it. Again?
I'll give you the kind of point that I remember reading an article a long time ago by John Searle talking about this sort of thing, right? And he had this interesting argument for why this kind of evolutionary adaptive explanation is not adequate for explaining relevant notions of purpose, right? And his example was he picks up on Davidson's swamp man. I don't know. This means nothing to most people here. Right. So a bolt of lightning strikes a swamp, right? And by an extraordinarily improbable sequence of coincidences, you get the molecules get fried, they scramble and rearrange, and you get something that looks exactly like a normal human being. Okay, really unlikely, but not conceptually impossible. But I mean, it's not only does it look from the outside, but you could surgeon could slice this guy open, and there'd be all the relevant. Well, he would look exactly like what a human would look like under the hood, right? He's got something that, well, it looks exactly like a human heart. He can make stumpy noises. Does his heart have the purpose of pumping blood since he has no evolutionary history?
I would say no, because, again, like I said, the natural purpose, the primary function arrived at by natural selection. Since this came from a completely, totally random freak lightning bolt, no, it wouldn't have the purpose.
So it's like he is one gigantic mutation.
Yeah, essentially, yes. He's one huge freak of nature.
I'm just wondering if there could be any natural purpose to the randomness, like in some sense that biological experimentation almost has a purpose of sometimes working out and sometimes not working out.
Like a purpose in the accidental copying of DNA or the accidental doubling or something like that?
Right. or traits that might evolve but end up being, not positive to the survival of the species and they die out.
In the way that I'm using natural purpose, I don't believe so. Because it has to do a lot with the difference between the way these mutations or this big giant freak swamp man or those things come about. And there's a slight difference in the method. In one, it's just natural laws, which are just things that happen. And then in the other, it's a little bit different than just natural laws. Like there's kind of like a process involved, and that process is natural selection. And because selection is what grants primary function and gives it a purpose, if it lacks that. Thoughts?
Can I test you some more? I'd like to. Okay, so we had to learn the hard way that there's such a thing as evolution.
Yes.
A lot of certain benighted folks try to deny us in this study.
Yes.
So did we have to learn the hard way that there were natural purposes in a sense? I mean, Aristotle knew nothing about evolution. I mean, the crude theories that were around, he rightly ridiculed. They were bad theories. Could he not? But he was willing to talk about natural purposes. Was he talking about the same thing we are talking about?
Maybe
the same kind of examples you will notice.
Yeah, maybe in some ways. Because we had to go from explaining things with future purpose to realizing there's a way for things to arise without design. And that was natural selection. And then I think, and I really think that we had to realize that we cut too much out in trying to just explain Autalk because it doesn't fully satisfy our questions. And so, I think we might have.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thought because, I mean, suppose it turns out that, oh, good Lord, the Discovery Institute was right. Evolution is always this massive misunderstanding. Would we have learned that wings are not for flying? And I'm tempted to say no. Wings are still for flying, whether evolution exists or not. I'm tempted to say this.
I don't know how, because evolution is still what gives natural purpose. Are you thinking? Yeah, I'm not sure what you're thinking.
Well, I guess my thought is, all right, so it turns out, it was all an enormous hoax. There really is no such thing as evolution. The creationists were all right.
Yeah, so like if there really were a guy pulling the strings.
Yeah, actually, that's a bad example because it means that then it does give a purpose grandeur, but outside of nature. But suppose that maybe Aristotle was right and the species were just eternal. They never evolved. They've always been penguins, and they always looked exactly like they do now.
Yeah.
Right. They didn't evolve from any more primitive being. Now, if we learned this, of course, this seems quite plausible, but if we did, I mean, would we be stuck saying that, I guess birds' wings do not have the function of fly?
I don't think so, because that primary function that I've been kind of alluding to, in a case like that, this eternal existence of, forms, I guess, that would, I think, arguably be the way in which something gained its primary function, and if something has a primary function, it has a purpose.
Yeah, that seems to be going back to this point you were making. I mean, whether evolution exists or not, certain things are just good for the organism, and it doesn't seem to rely on natural selection in any really tight way.
Yeah, that was an embarrassing example with the flightless bird.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but the point is, it's still good for them to have whatever.
Well, they use them to swim, right? They use them to swim, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do. They kind of fly through the water.
They fly in the water. Yeah.
Got time for one more question, maybe?
I'm not sure if I have a question, but what is or what exists, and then what did not come to be over that period of time, and all the possibilities that did not come to be. Is it necessary to maybe, like was suggested, is there some natural selection and evolution, or even creation? Is there something misleading about the words that are used to speak about getting from long ago to what exists now as the state and condition, is it something in the mind that has to think of this as being the best, or let's say, the working out of some purpose, or what about all those potential, what about all those things that didn't happen that might also have looked like purposeful things?
So, I mean, I guess is the question just that the use of the language that I'm referring
What
to
you're
is
stuck
this-
with, what you're stuck with, talking with terms like evolution, natural selection, even creation, anything like that, are we stuck talking? I mean, maybe is that what you said? We can't think of it in any other way than to consider it a purpose.
If I'm understanding you correctly, I think maybe, yeah. But, I mean, I would say that that's the case for just about everything. Because we're kind of just means trying to describe a bunch of things as accurately as we possibly can. But, I mean, ultimately, we are just coming up with these vibrations of air and trying to come up with meaning. And it's oftentimes sloppy.